green screen setup? Alright, well this is a new show that I'm going to be doing called Box Office Breakdown, which you guessed it, we're going to be breaking down the weekend box office. This show will air every Tuesday, depending on how fast my internet is. And I don't really want to do any cuts or anything. I just want to have a frank and open discussion about the weekend box office, how things performed, and even talking about why they performed the way that they did. So let's begin. So last week, Matt Reeves, drunk off the critical success that was War of the Planet of the Apes, threw out Ben Affleck's Batman script. But it suddenly seems a lot less cool that he's done that, considering the fact that War for the Planet of the Apes seriously underperformed. Maybe Warner Brothers wants to go and fish that script out of the trash. And if Ben Affleck does want to fight for his script, here's a few bullet points that he could bring to the table. Alright, so War for the Planet of the Apes did $56.5 million for the opening weekend, which sounds great, but it is 22% behind the opening of Matt Reeves' last foray into the Apes franchise, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, when he took over the franchise from Rupert Wyatt. The movie skewed to much older people than most blockbusters usually do, with 65% of viewers being over the age of 25. Now, don't forget the name of the game when it comes to blockbusters is you want to kind of get the kids in. You want them to get away from the video games, and that's when you really start to make your money. But it was also an unusually male crowd, with 65% of audiences being male, where blockbusters, or even just films across the board, are usually a 50-50 split male to female. But women didn't really go to this one. What I find really surprising with War for the Planet of the Apes is the lack of social media buzz this film had. Now, you could make the claim that Disney stole the buzz with all their D23 announcements, but another point to make is actually the fact that Woody Harrelson only has like 13,200 followers on Twitter, but he hasn't actually tweeted since March 29th. Like, he did not tweet about this movie at all. So it also brings into the discussion of whether talent has an obligation to not only promote their film, but also build up their social media presence. Although I don't see why they wouldn't. Because if all your films underperform, like, you're less likely to get work. Anyway, although bailing your film out on social media isn't always a guaranteed way, as Dwayne Johnson learned with Baywatch earlier this year, but I don't see why you wouldn't at least even try, so you're not to blame for your film underperforming. A great segue into this is the fact that you can't really blame Tom Holland or Robert Downey Jr. for Spider-Man's second weekend drop, and that was 61.4%. Like, they've been promoting the film really hard, with Robert Downey Jr. earning over 24,000 Instagram followers per day, and relative newcomer Tom Holland earned over 74,000 Instagram followers per day. That is insane. Like, Woody Harrelson needs to pick up his game. So, who is to blame for Spider-Man Homecoming's 64% drop? I mean, it's not out of the realm for blockbusters, but usually it should be somewhere between around the 50s if you want your film to be considered healthy. And at its worst, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 had a 55% drop, and Wonder Woman had a 43% drop on its second weekend. Wonder Woman altogether, though, had amazing staying power. But we'll get to Wonder Woman a little bit later. So again, who is to blame? So I think maybe War for the Planet of the Apes, you could make a pretty compelling argument there. But seeing as though it's skewed much older, it really shouldn't be hurting a family film featuring high school students like Spider-Man Homecoming. So I don't really think that that's too big of a valid excuse. There could be Spider-Man fatigue though, and that sounds a little bit more realistic to me. Like, everyone who was interested in seeing Spider-Man went opening weekend, and I also think the amount of diversity in the film really hurt repeat viewings in regards to Middle America, which they're quite conservative. But what you really want to do is target the middle America audiences, because they're the ones who usually do the repeat viewings. But I personally think the film will do amazing business on the ancillary markets. For those who don't know what an ancillary market is, it's when it plays on like aeroplanes, hotels, or any types of streaming services. In this show, we'll probably be talking about ancillary markets a lot, because in regards to underperforming at the box office and guaranteeing a sequel, the ancillary market is incredibly important. Worldwide though, Spider-Man Homecoming is doing great business. They've done $469.3 million, and 261 of that is being from the global market. But what's troubling is the fact that the Chinese release date hasn't even been announced yet, but the rumor is they won't get one till August. Why the heck, you may ask? Well, the thing is, it's just like Russia. China is really concerned that their local films won't be able to compete with Hollywood titles. So what they're doing is they're actually holding back the release of the Hollywood films to give an edge over for their local films. And because piracy is so big, there's this big concern that everyone will have already seen Spider-Man Homecoming by August, and it certainly feels as though they're really late to the party in terms of social media chatter. So it'll be like, why don't we just wait for the ancillary market instead of giving a wide release to China? I'm sure the studios are thinking. Still though, it's the second biggest opening for Sony, and if it gets to 800 million, it'll be in the range of other Spider-Man entries, and at Sony, Spider-Man is a little spider in a huge web. Check this transition out. Although Edgar Wright was once tapped to make another MCU insect film, and he's becoming a little bit of a Sony star himself, Baby Driver is racing to the century mark domestically. Domestically, for those who don't realise, when I say domestic, it means the US domestic, not Australia. But to come up to close to 100 million for an Edgar Wright film, that's a really big deal. And me personally, I'm a huge fan of the film, so I'm really happy to see that. It made 8.7 million in its third weekend, bringing it up to 73.1 million domestic and 96.2 million total, which means that it's a huge hit, seeing as though the budget was only 34 million to make. Edgar Wright was considered for Star Trek Beyond, for those who don't know, but Paramount passed on him and instead went to Justin Lin, which I'm sure that they're regretting now because of how strong the return for Baby Driver is. So don't be too surprised if Edgar Wright starts getting like blockbuster offers and actually starts getting seriously considered again. It's a career high for him by far and away, and I'm sure that it's a career changer, but I feel like Baby Driver was a game changer in terms of turning the director's career around from the indie scene to the big time. He purposely played the Hollywood game. He played the festival game, he played the critic game, he played the media game. Like, he said he was going to make a movie that will appeal to the media and critics without alienating his core fan base, and that he did. He's a savvy businessman, and I think he's realised that Hollywood is a business, and it's a business that is playing really great right now with such a great strategy. Despicable Me came in third place, but I haven't seen any of the Despicable Me movies, so I can't really comment on it. The way that it's performing though is I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't Despicable Me 4, and instead it got turned into a TV show or something like that, because it's seriously underperforming from Minions last year and the rest of the Despicable Me films. As for Wonder Woman, slow and steady wins a race, and things are getting particularly interesting now. She's about to pass Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 to become the biggest domestic earner for the summer. Now, she won't beat Beauty and the Beast, which is at 500 million, and that's one of the few films ever to make that figure domestically. But it'll put her at second place of the year so far, which is nothing to sneeze at, but the competition, I think, will be more on the back end of the year. You know, like Thor, Ragnarok, Justice League, Last Jedi, but she's in good standing and she'll probably be in the top 5 earners of the year. But what else is interesting is the fact that she's actually about to pass the final Harry Potter movie, making Warner Brothers' 3rd biggest domestic hit of all time, not adjusted for inflation. And that comes after Christopher Nolan's 2 Dark Knight movies. Altogether, it looks like she will be the 16th biggest worldwide release for a Warner Brothers film. So I really think that they need to appease the international market for the sequel. But rumor has it that sequel is going to get announced this weekend at Comic-Con. And they're actually going to be kicking off Comic-Con Saturday morning in Hall H. So that's really interesting and I can't wait. But anyway, a few weeks ago, The Big Sick and The Beguiled were on the same path in terms of their expansion strategies for a wide release. Well, the results are in now, and The Big Sick is coming in at 5th place with 7.6 million, which means that it's won its per theatre average. It expanded from 4 theatres in all of America to 2,300 theatres, but with The Beguiled already out at the top 10, The Big Sick has definitely won, which is fantastic for Kamal Manjani's career, but not so great for Sofia Coppola's The Beguiled and her commercial essence. Just to highlight the different release strategies, The Beguiled went wide release really fast, but it never got into 1,000 screens or 1,000 theatres. The second weekend it added about 600-700 theatres, and it did put it into the top 10. But it just wasn't a strong enough film for repeat viewings. But in saying that, the Big Sick is a stronger sell because it's a comedy, and The Big Sick went wide the second weekend like The Beguiled, but it expanded to 2,500 theatres instead of 700. And Amazon needs roughly 30 million to feel really good about The Big Sick, because it spent 12 million on it and they bought it at Sundance last year. And I really hope it works out for them, but we'll see what happens this award season. Personally, I haven't seen The Big Sick yet. It hasn't come out in Australia, but The Beguiled does have the prestige of being an Oscar Beatty subject matter film, as well as the prestige of Sofia Coppola, who the Academy just loves. So, to finish up, let's relay this weekend. So, the first place was War for the Planet of the Apes, with 56.5 million opening. Second was Spider-Man with 45.2 million in its second weekend. Third was Despicable Me 3 with 19.4 million. Fourth was Baby Driver with 8.7 million. I hope to God we get a sequel to that. Fifth was The Big Sick with 7.5 million. And finally, after 7 weeks, Wonder Woman's been knocked out of the top 5 and it earned 6.8 million. So thank you so much for tuning into my box office breakdown. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please comment below to continue the discussion. I can't wait to see what everyone else thinks. And if you'd like to see more videos, please click here to see more. And thanks for watching. Bye.